On this week's episode of the RAG podcast, I was joined by Elena Kyria. Elena is the founder of a medical device recruitment business called Elemed. She started the business 5 years ago after being a top biller for a well-known brand in the UK, and felt like she wanted to do it herself and could create something that was pretty impressive. Now, she spent the first year at home in her pajamas, which she was pretty honest about, and got pretty depressed, but still made a pretty good living in the first year. But it was a second year when she started investing in her personal brand when it all changed. So she started producing content, sharing content, thinking about her knowledge in the market and educating her audience. And effectively her LinkedIn presence grew exponentially to the point where she had posts go viral. She's had business come to her, which is pretty incredible for a business of 5 years old. So she's in a position now where she's super profitable. She's got a 6-man team, or 6-person team, and she has some pretty big plans for the future with this mindset that, you know, business never ends. It's an infinite game. So she's not necessarily putting a time limit and a number attached. She just wants to be the best recruitment business in the MedTech space. So super inspiring female, powerful female, energetic, loads of energy, loads of great ideas, loads of stories to tell of things she did well and things she didn't. As always on this show, it was honest and it was transparent. So if you're thinking about how you're going to stand out in 2020 and beyond, and you want to grow that niche brand, this is the one for you. This is the episode for you. How do you get a business in the first 5 years that has over 70% jobs called in? I mean, it's unheard of. So listen carefully, take notes, and feel free to ask her if you want any information directly. So without further ado, Elena, welcome to the RAG podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you in.
I'm really excited actually to have this conversation with you.
Really? You've been waiting, haven't you?
I have, because someone let me down.
Yeah, shit. Yeah, so we better get this out now, right? I usually give people a bit of shit at the start because they let me down or they've been taking the time. And the only episode since we started where I let the person down was you.
Because you had a hangover?
I didn't. I wish it was that. I went home with a migraine. I was a mess. And I never have sick days. So you're not going to believe me. And do you know what? I don't really care. So it's all good. But you're here now, which is the most important thing. And it's 2020. We've got a big year ahead.
Indeed.
So excited to hear all about that. But I've obviously given you a little intro. But for the listeners' benefit, can you give us a little introduction to who you are and what you do?
So, Elena Kyria, and I'm the founder of Elemed. We're a MedTech recruitment company. Mm-hmm. We specialise in very niche verticals within MedTech, so regulatory, quality, clinical, R&D, and we work internationally. Wow. So I've had the company now for we're coming into our 5th year, mm-hmm. and super excited about 2020. Yeah. It's really, kind of things started to really pick up for us towards the end of last year in terms of growth and getting new people in, and we've made some kind of key strategic hires. So 2020 is all about culture, growth, basically like building on what I spent the first 4 years doing. Yeah. So
excited to hear all about that. And MedTech is medical device technology, right?
Right.
And it's I feel like it's everywhere. Like I see it all the time. Like that, I'd never even heard of that terminology a year ago, and now it's like MedTech. So there seems like more people interested in that market.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well, because like how I've even found out about MedTech was that I was basically hired to do something in pharma, right? And for me, pharma recruitment was just it was difficult to understand because it's not a tangible product, right? Yeah. It's like a drug. You're basically talking about kind of drugs, and you're recruiting people that are talking to you about drugs. And but with MedTech, it's a product, and it's so like wide in terms of what it could be. It could be, an app all the way through to like an artificial heart, all the way through to, like a wheelchair. Yeah. So it's so broad from a product perspective. It's super interesting. Like some of the companies that we talk to and the stuff that they're doing is like changing healthcare. Yeah. So it's a really nice space to be in.
Yeah, it sounds it. Well, let's go back.
Okay.
Always go back. So you started the business when you were in your 25, mid-20s?
25.
It's young for a recruitment owner, which is ballsy. When did you start in recruitment? How long before that did you join the industry?
So I basically came into recruitment straight after uni, pretty much. And so 3.5 years before that.
How did you get into recruitment?
Yeah, that's a good one. So like I basically came out of uni and applied to be on The Apprentice. I always knew I was going to...
You look like you could be on The Apprentice.
Yeah.
You got that about you, haven't you?
In all fairness, they did put another Greek girl on instead of me. Yeah. I got to the last 20 though.
Wow.
And they choose 16 for the show. So so I did that. And then basically my dad was like, you need to get a job, right? And if you don't get a job, I'm going to get one for you.
Yeah.
And I always trust what my dad says, because when I was 16, he said that and I didn't listen to him. And then he got me a job in McDonald's and I had to work, on the drive-through.
Go on. Your dad sounds like a ledge.
On £4.20 an hour, I have to say.
I was on £3.28 in Morrison's at my first job. So
oh, really?
Yours sounds great.
So I kind of like knew I wanted to do sales because I always quite enjoyed talking to people. And
what degree did you do?
I did actually French and Spanish with linguistics.
Wow. And do you speak Greek as well?
I speak Greek as well, yeah. But my Greek's like village Greek, right? So that's kind of like my B language. It's not like my French and Spanish. I properly formally studied it. I lived in Spain. I've got family in France, but the Greek is more kind of like I learned it from my grandparents, and they speak. I speak basically like a little old lady from the village in the 1960s.
Wow.
So, but
Can you get by in Greece though?
Yeah, in Cyprus. So I'm Greek Cypriot.
Right, okay, yeah.
So I get by. Yeah, but so then I kind of like was thinking about going into sales, but then somehow I kind of fell into recruitment. Everyone does, right? I mean, you speak to anyone, it's like, what's your story? I fell into it. But they asked me, the reason I joined the company, what I did, which was Huntress at the time, was because I was basically hired to set up more of an international desk for them. And they wanted to do something in sciences, and there was like no kind of, there was no market, no clients, no candidates, no database in sciences. And it was like, do something in pharma, right? Yeah. And for them at the time, pharma was just science. And because I speak French and Spanish, I kind of got into the Swiss market through my French, and found my little niche in MedTech. And at the time there was really not that many people actually in that market. So I really managed to
you almost forced your way into MedTech? Yeah. So told Huntress about it? Or? So
Huntress, like they called it pharma, right? The division that kind of I started, but it was MedTech, the piece that I did. I just kind of like fell into it. I found a really good candidate, and it was a candidate short market. And I just went straight for the VP, just sold in my candidate. And he took the bait, right? And he just kind of said, hey, that sounds like a really good person. And, from there, I started to like build the market outwards.
Yeah.
I had a really good experience at Huntress, like I managed to set some records, rookie of the year in the first year, top biller in second year, top biller when I left. But I just felt that working for a big corporate company, you couldn't really have any influence over the direction. You couldn't influence where the investment was going in terms of, like marketing. And I'm a big believer in marketing, right? Like I think it's the future, if you're not doing it. And that's why you got me here.
That's why I would have to agree. But when did you realize you were going to own your own business? Can you remember that moment?
Do you know what? From when I was a kid, I was always going to have my own business. The question was always just doing what? You know what I mean?
Your dad was going to figure that one out.
Well, no. When I was like 4 years old, I remember being in my granddad's fish shop and like mixing flour and water, deep frying it where he fried, all the fish, and then going up to the customers and being like, buy my product. So like I've always kind of had that about me. But I think for me, that when I decided that I was going to like set up my own kind of recruitment company was, I remember being on a lunch club and kind of the CEO at the time saying to me, you're doing really well and it's great to be top biller, but I'd rather have 6 100k billers than 1 600k biller. And for me, that was like a bit of a blow, when you've like built something for a company. And then I kind of went, I'm going to do it myself then. So
which makes logical sense.
Exactly. Right? So like I took the decision to do it. And I remember when I first approached my family, right? So I'm Greek and my parents are really really traditional. And I remember like March, I'd obviously been out for drinks after work. And I remember, I was like 24 at the time, whatever, went home, marched into my mum and dad's room. They were asleep, woke them up and was like, I'm setting up my own company. And my dad basically just sat up and started laughing. And he was like, don't be so silly, like go to bed, like you're obviously drunk or whatever, But I think like my mum always kind of like supported me, and she kind of said like, if she thinks she can do it, like do it. And then I did.
At midnight on a Tuesday.
They took a little bit of coaxing like to get around, but after a while, like, you know, and then when I started to kind of, you know, when the brand started to come together and they started to see success, obviously then the family.
Well, they must have known you were doing well in Hundreds, right? If you're billing 600 grand, you must be coming on with some decent money. And living a nice life. Yeah,
I think, you know, but I don't think they believed it, because I think the thing I love about recruitment, right, is like, it doesn't matter what your background is. No. It doesn't matter who you know, it matters how good you are, yeah, but it doesn't matter about your training. It doesn't matter your education. Do you see what I mean? Like you can come in and earn a lot of money and be highly successful within a couple of years.
When others have had to study for it for years.
100%, right? And like, that's the thing I love about recruitment. But also I think that's the thing that's also quite unbelievable for a lot of people.
Yeah, if they're not in it, they're like, what is this bubble? I remember when I went to Australia in the January of 2014 with my little brother and I got into recruitment in Melbourne, and then I moved back to London. Well, I moved to London 2 years later. He stayed and moved to Sydney, and he opened his own agency a couple of years later, and he killed it. So me and him were both top billers. And he was in an agency in Sydney, I was in London, and I was like, I want to go and see you. But I took my parents, and then my older brother came as well. And me and Jake had money, and we were chatting. We were so engaged in our jobs. And my older brother was in private like pensions administration. Hey, he was the smartest out of the three of us. Like school, he was the best. And he was like, what the fuck are these? What are they doing? Like, he didn't believe it until that holiday. And for 3 weeks, he just listened to me and him bang on about recruitment, talk about the money, plan our futures. And anyway, he got back, and now he's top biller at Oliver James in Manchester, and has been for 4 years. And I completely agree. People don't know it exists, but that's part of why I love it as well. I don't want everyone to know about it.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you know, I think it's a really nice industry, because like it's a people industry as well. And you talk about the money, but I think for me, at a certain point, it becomes about more than the money.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It becomes,
so after that, how long were you at Huntress after that point where you were like, I'm going to start? How long did you take your time? Did you go straight away? What did you do? Your dates aren't great. You told me that.
No, my dates are bad. Like literally like a couple of months.
Right.
A couple of months. Because my commission was also coming in, kind of like, I was waiting for kind of like I had a big paycheck coming in. So I waited for that. And then I walked away from my year bonus, but then you have to. Yeah. But then I had restricted covenants for 8 months that were enforced.
Right.
Yeah. So I just took some time out to kind of like research the market, you know, and actually I was really good. I didn't actually go out and start contacting clients. I know a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But for me, it was more about thinking about kind of like, how am I going to position this, you know.
Did you go away and have some holidays? And
I bought a house and I renovated it basically myself, right? Like I was doing kind of like, you know, stripping down walls and painting and decorating and stuff like that. So that was just like a good disconnect. And then it got to a point where like my restricted covenants were like coming towards an end, and one of my clients got in touch and was just like, Eleanor, where are you? Like, what is going on? I need people. Like, I need you to come and help me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then it was just, I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was that in my first year, it was really reactive, right? So what I mean by that is, the client came and was like, can you help us recruit? And I was like, absolutely. And then he's like, okay, cool. Send your terms and conditions to our HR. And I'm like, got no terms and conditions, right? So like, now I need to get terms and conditions. And then it's like, HR's like, cool. Where's your website? And I'm like, got no website. Get onto Wix, like build the website in like 2 days. You know, it's like proper basic website.
So I want to explore this, but bit more, right? So I keep always, whenever people message me on LinkedIn, and thanks for the people that do, because I get quite a lot now of people asking stuff like saying, I love the episodes, blah, blah, blah. And I always say like, any feedback, anything you want. And a guy messaged me, I think it was today or yesterday, saying, in fact, I'm going to read it out. Let me read it out. He said, because I'm going to forget it. He said, where is it? He said, couple more quick questions around the specific tools, software that people are using to run their businesses couldn't hurt. I.e. getting them to name exactly what CRM they're using, automation software, accounting software, marketing tools, blah, blah, blah. I think that he said, beyond that, I could probably do with more info around resolving partnership conflicts, differences in views between founders, etc., which you're a sole founder, right?
Yeah, it's just me.
So we can't talk about that today.
No.
I could talk a lot about that in my business. But so let's go back in a bit more logistically. So you're going to start the company, you take a bit of time out. How did you come up with the name Elemed?
Oh my God. That's a good question, and it's not what you think.
Right.
So what do you think?
Your name and MedTech.
Right. And that's the most basic answer that everybody comes up with. And I wish it was that easy. So my thing was like, I wanted to come up with a name that didn't sound like a person, right? Because you know, a lot of recruitment companies are like two people's names put together.
Yeah.
So I was like, and I wanted it to sound MedTech, right? So I was coming up with all these different names with like Med, or with these random names with loads of X's in. I don't know. That sounded really like,
cool. Very cool.
I kept just drawing blanks, and every time I came up with like a good name, it was taken. And then it just got to the point where I just went, do you know what? I'm just going to open a dictionary, and I'm going to just, whatever I find, I'm just going to go with it. Because also my other thing was that it needs to sound good. Like if a French person says it, or if a German person says it, because sometimes you have these, I mean, that's because I studied linguistics. You get these like consonants that people can't pronounce. So I wanted something easy to say. Anyway, so I opened the book, literally the dictionary, and it ended up on E. And then I found the word element.
Right.
And then I went, I can just put med on the end.
Yeah.
And then I came up with Elemed, and I was like, that's it. And then I was like,
that's actually quite a clever way of doing it.
I was like, this is so genius. And then, you know, when I kind of like went live with the name, everyone was like, Elena, that's amazing. That's just like your name with Med. And I was like, no.
Did you think about that?
No, it took me like a month like to come up with that
name. So forever you're going to have people thinking you did that.
No, exactly. So now I just embrace it. And I'm
the
just like,
story's out. She's made it up, but we'll deal with whatever. So you get the name right. You already start talking to clients before you've built a website.
Yeah, literally.
Do you have a CRM in place?
No.
What did you go with in the end?
Then I went with Bullhorn.
Bullhorn, yeah.
You know, standard.
Had you used Bullhorn at Huntress?
No, so at Huntress, we started off with Fortuna, which was this kind of like CRM that wasn't even in the cloud, right? And then we moved to this other one built on Salesforce.
Yeah.
And it was horrible,
right?
Basically. And so, you know, I started to just ask around, what do people use? And, you know, Bullhorn was
So at what point did you get all that stuff sorted? Because I think you sound like you've started some stuff without
I absolutely started. I started with basically nothing. And as I started to need stuff, then I started to get it. So I think like the CRM and stuff like that, I started to get maybe 4 or 5 months in.
Yeah.
When I was like, I actually need to keep track of my CVs now.
Yeah. So, Google Slides or whatever. Google Docs works. So you got this Bullhorn CRM. You built your own website in Wix.
In Wix, yeah.
And
like I literally
write it all, design
fully
it all.
went it. Yeah.
Go on.
And I have to say, you know, like when at a certain point, it was just so bad. You know, like I mean, at the time I was so proud of it, but looking back, it's literally cringe.
I hope no one can find it. There's got to be a way someone can like pull back old shit. I've got some WhatsApp videos of us like, yeah, look at that. Oh wow, Hoxo Media. Wow. I'm like, look back now.
I know.
So bad.
That's the thing as you grow as well. Like you look back and you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I actually put that out
Where
there.
did you start the business? Where did you base yourself?
That's a good question. So like I basically started from home.
Yeah.
And
with your mum and dad in
no I bought my house, right?
Shit,
decorated it, whatever, and then started working from home because I was kind of like, why am I going to pay for an office? You know what I mean?
And travel.
Yeah. So I started working out of my spare room at home, set up my little board, you know, so I can put my numbers on, you know, and it worked really well. But I have to say, I actually became depressed. Like I was never diagnosed.
No.
But I have to say, it was just me and my cat, like fully me and my cat. I'd wake up, you know, because I work international markets, I'd start at like 6:30, 7 a.m. in my pajamas. And at first it was all good because it's like, yeah, I can make a coffee when I want. I can have whatever lunch I want. But then after a while, it becomes like super lonely, even though you're speaking to people on the phone. Yeah. It'd just literally be me and my black cat.
There's no one to share it with, is there?
Exactly. And then, you know, then I realized I was turning into that crazy cat lady at a certain point. And I was like, I need to get out.
So how long was that for?
That was, so like basically in year 2, I kind of got out.
Oh, so you did a whole year at home?
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember my first year because we had a Regis Business Lounge in London Bridgeway. And I fucking hated it. Like I had a business partner, and JJ came in after a month, and we had like a bit of a team quite quick, but I hated the office. So I'd work from home a lot, but then I started going stir crazy. Like, I just don't like being on my own.
Yeah.
I can do like a day and then I've had enough. So at the end of that year, when you say depressed, like what do you mean? Like
emotionally, like it was really hard. You kind of like, how do I say it? Like you wake up, you work, and then you go to bed, right? And like then, you know, you don't meet people in the street, right? Like you don't interact with humans. And once you've started doing that for a long time, it becomes, you start to realize, oh, wow, you know, like, I don't know, you just start to feel really down, you know, and especially when you have a bad day, you know, like doing a job like that from home, especially when a lot of people are saying no to you, candidates are hanging up on you, you know what it's like, right? There's nobody that you can bounce off of. There's nobody that's
can't share any wins.
Exactly. And so, and I remember like doing like deals and just being like, yeah, all right. Like I'll just make a cup of tea. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing. And so that's when, for me, I realized it became more than the money, right? Because like it became more about like building something and building something exceptional.
You do hear a lot of people talk about, you know, the doing it in your pants kind of, that's kind of the joke, but it really is like, I can sit at home in my pajamas and do the job, but then that'll fit some people.
Yeah.
So you get to that point where you're making money. I mean, 100K in year one still. I mean, think about it, it's your money, right? So it's decent. It's good money. But then you make the conscious decision that you want to branch out. How did the whole business development process look in the first year? Because you had a period where you couldn't speak to people. Did you just go to once you could, did you just run back out to the guys you already knew, or had you already built a client base that was different? Yeah,
I think the thing that I'm actually really proud of in terms of like the way that I've always worked is that I have accounts, but I don't have like, you know, major accounts in a sense where like all the revenue's coming from one particular client. We've always had new business every month, you know? So it was a mixture of both. It was like going out to market and being like, I'm back. And then at the same time going to new people and being like, hey, this is what I do, right? And at that time as well was when I consciously was kind of like, I'm going to build a brand, you know? And I started to put a lot of time into building my personal brand.
Right. So this is music to my ears, right? Because there's not many. I mean, Mark Gaisford was a cracker at the start of this season, but I can still count on one hand the amount of recruiters that I see constantly putting their content out. It's not very many. And you're up there. So when you say you started to consciously look at it, where did that idea come from? Where did that thought process come from?
I think. Where did that come from? For me, it was like, I knew that LinkedIn as a platform, like you could be massively leveraged. And I don't
think it started changing though. Like it did feel in the past, it was just a place to search for people.
It did.
And it was like, I'll put my jobs up. I didn't even want to read other people's shit. I didn't care. I just go on there and look for people, and that's all I did.
Yeah.
But now it is a network. Like, as Facebook
100%.
Crap. I don't give a shit about Facebook anymore.
Yeah.
Instagram is different. And I don't even have it. I deleted it over Christmas, which is interesting, yeah. I got to the point, New Year's Eve, do you know when you keep seeing people's best 9, and they're all putting up their amazing photos of the year, and I was just like, not that I'd not had a good year, but I was a bit like, I'm not even enjoying my own New Year because I'm fucking looking at everyone else's.
The thing about Instagram is that it's like fake, basically, isn't it? It's like people like editing their lives to make it look a certain way. I think the thing that I like about LinkedIn is that as a platform, it's still very organic, like the reach that you can have, you know?
It'll change.
No, 100% it's going to change. So yeah, 100% people need to be getting on that now if they're not. But like for me, I realized that it was a way that I could get in front of a lot of people in one go, right? Like if you instead of doing 100 business development calls, you know, you could get in front of 100 people with one good piece of content, right?
100%.
And in terms of like the credibility that gets associated with you, if you can show that you know what you're talking about, you know, that's as good as doing 100 business development calls, and you do it in 30 seconds with one good post, right?
The difference where I get a lot of recruitment owners pushing back on me when I say that, because look, I agree with you, but they say stuff like, you know, you don't know exactly who's looking, you don't know, you know, it's not like I can have a chat with them because they've viewed, and I can't turn it into something there and then. And I'm like, well, if it takes you 30 seconds, you can still do your business. Like, you don't have to not do what you've always done. I don't believe it has to replace what you're doing. It just adds a layer on top.
Well, do you know what? It's a warm intro, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, like now in my market, I have the luxury of being able to pick up the phone and I can call most people, and if I say my name or Elemed, like they'll know who, you know, they'll have heard it somewhere.
And in 5 years, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think so too, but we're still building it, you know, we're not completely there yet. No. And I think, you know, this year is going to be a lot about building Elemed brand, because I think one of the challenges that I had as well, where I kind of started, I didn't start hiring immediately when I first started the business. It was just me. Is that I got to a point where I started to invest a lot in my personal brand, but not so much in Elemed, right?
Yeah. So so let's go back again. So end of year one, you move out. Where did you go?
So I went to a place called Huckletree,
right,
which is literally next door to where we are now. And it was like a shared workspace.
Okay.
And I was on a big open floor.
Yeah. And that's when you start thinking about the brand and taking this business to the next level.
And I start working full time.
Yeah. So when you say working on the brand, what content were you producing at that point?
So at the time, I wasn't actually producing content per se, but what I realized was that I'm a recruiter, I'm connected to a lot of people, and people share interesting stuff, and they maybe only have like 300 people in their network, where at the time I maybe had like 1,000 or so. Yeah. And I was like, do you know what? Like so-and-so could find that interesting. Let me just share it, right? And this is what I say to a lot of people, because I do workshops and stuff on personal branding as well. It's not, you don't have to go out there straight away and start creating your own content.
And videoing yourself.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks that, I don't know what I'll do on video.
Yeah,
you don't need that.
No. What you first do is you're like, okay, and the whole thing is it has to be authentic and it has to be valuable for your audience.
Yeah, not just about you.
Because I think if it's about you, or if you do it because you're trying to get likes, like people see that, right? So for me, it was always like, whatever I saw that I thought was interesting and on trend in my market that I know is a hot topic, I would just share it.
Do you know what? What you just said there is probably the reason why Instagram and LinkedIn are so different, because I think most people with followings on Instagram, it's about them and they do it for likes. Like I'm not talking about like Gary V's and Grant Cardone's. I'm talking about like, the influencer communities, because they look great. It's about them. Look at how good my life is.
Yeah.
It's not offering that much value. Whereas you're right, LinkedIn, it's all about how much value can you offer.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of recruitment companies go wrong, I think. They just promote their internal stuff all day. This person got promoted, this person got promoted, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's like, does anyone actually give a shit?
No, they don't. And so we rarely do that.
Yeah.
I mean, we've started to do a bit of that, because also what we've realized is that people sometimes like to know a little bit about the people behind the name. Yeah. But for me, LinkedIn is all about, like, the way that I use it is like add value, right? Like, what can I share? What can I let people know? Because I know that I have a reach now that is bigger than most people's. So people will find stuff out because I've posted it, right? Yeah. And then it just helps, build that relationship. And luckily, like, I've had people reach out to me and be like, thank you for what you're doing for the industry, you know, not recruitment people, but actual like MedTech people. Yeah. And for me, that is
your
like,
industry.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, that is like the greatest reward that you can have. Like somebody telling you you're doing a good job via the content that you're sharing.
One of the things people they can't tangibly see it. Like, I pick up the phone, 100 people, I get older 10, I turn it into, I get a role, I fill the role, right? Simplest version of the recruitment process ever, but you know what I'm saying. Whereas when it comes to brand, people can't see it as well. They don't understand the metrics. How did you, like, I know how we measure it and I can tell you, but how did you originally start to try and even measure if you were growing a brand? Or was it just, did you not look at it and it was organic?
It was organic and instinctive, to be honest. Like for me, I'm not a marketing person, right? I just have instinct to do certain things, and then I'll just try it out and I'll just see what works and what doesn't. But just coming back to your earlier point, because I thought that was interesting. If anybody's in this for the long game, like personal brand, you have to do it. It's just not even a question, or at least, and company branding, you have to do it. If you're in it to kind of like make 100K, take your money and go and put it in some other investment and not think about recruitment, all right, maybe you don't need it. Yeah. But if you're trying to build something, like that's the future, like it's the present and it will be the future. I really passionately believe in the importance of it.
Yeah.
And then in terms of like kind of, growing it, I just tried different things, all different formats, a little bit video, sharing stuff, direct messaging people. I created a community on LinkedIn. And that's, I think, something that for me got like a lot of traction. Yeah. But it was a LinkedIn group. So there's this kind of really technical regulation that's coming into MedTech. And I created the MedTech MDR community, right? And now we're about 4,500 people in this group. I moderate it. I don't let anyone in unless they fit the criteria. And I'm really, really strict about it. But it started off being a place where I would just share content, about this regulation. But what it's actually turned into, totally organically, is it's just like where people ask questions to each other, right? Oh, I read this. What do you guys think? And it's like totally organic, and people are commenting and sharing, you know, their own experiences within the group, because they feel that it's a safe place to do that.
Yeah.
You know? And for me, that was a big game changer.
Wow. So one of the things we look at, I mean, if you quite simply, on a personal brand level, if you go on your LinkedIn, if you've got a premium license or above, you can see who's viewed your profile, right? And you can see how many people, and how many, like that. If you just have a spreadsheet that says, because it measures it based on, well, you don't even need a spreadsheet, because you can run it 12 months behind. But if you had a spreadsheet and just measured weekly, like we do it in a different tool, but how many views have I had every week on my profile? That number will show you an indication as to what you put out is what you get back. So I know over Christmas, mine dropped from like 4,000 views to 2,500 views because I've not put anything out. And, but that's a really simple, easy metric to go, am I growing my reach or not? And then also looking at we collect like the combined views of all the content we do, and then we aggregate it every month, so we can see like the content views are going up, they're going down. We can measure like what our best post was, what our worst post was. That's the kind of stuff that I don't expect everyone to go into that much detail. If you've got a marketeer who's like who you've got in the room today, then those basics are really important. But I think every recruiter, owner or not, should be measuring and looking consciously at who's viewing their profile. I
do definitely keep an eye on who views my profile. I look at, but to be honest, for me, that's not.
No, but the amount of people. The
amount of views,
that's the indicator.
But also, for me, what's important is engagement on my posts.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So it's more like we do track engagement on the posts, and also what type of posts perform well. So I've tried all different stuff, right? Like career tips and industry stuff, and interviewing somebody for like a minute at a conference and putting that out and seeing what works. And there's key themes that I know that work really well in my industry, so now I stick to them, you know, and every now and again I change it up. But for me, I find that is also a good kind of that's a good indicator of the stuff that you're putting out is actually having an effect, you know.
100%. Obviously there's a gentleman in your industry called Joe Mullins, right? Who I've spoke to him once on video, and I really like his stuff. Like he's clearly spending a hell of a lot on production value, and he talks in the same space. How has what he's doing had an impact on what you're doing, or how do you try and stack up to that?
I definitely admire what he's doing, you know, like I think I've never spoken to him, and Joe, if you're listening, give me a call. I'm
sure he would. I mean, I DM'd him, and I commented on one of his posts, and he wrote back going, "Hey, seeing what you guys do, great." And I was like, "Fucking hell." So I messaged him, and we set up a video call, and he instantly was trying to give advice, trying to add value. So he's one of them, like, give 99% of your business value away, and 99% of people wouldn't use it anyway. So he's not going to worry about telling you what to do.
That's the stuff when you give things away for free as well, isn't it?
Exactly.
But no, so like I think what he's doing is really interesting. Where I think we differ a little bit is that for us, we're very candidate centric, right? So Mullins Group talks a lot about companies and technology.
Yeah, he's always going in and seeing the latest tech.
Right, which is really cool from like a technology perspective. Our focus, Elemed, like for me, the whole ethos of the way we work is that the candidate is the customer. Like we don't even call companies clients.
What do you call them?
Companies, like literally companies.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right?
I've never heard that before.
Because think about when you first got into recruitment. Did you ever go via rec to rec?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not first, but no, I did. I got rejected by one. Then I got into the company he told me he'd sent me to, which he didn't. I got in direct and then pinged him an email. So
I don't know if you ever had this experience, but this was my belief, right? When I was working with a recruiter at the beginning, I totally thought that I was his client, in the sense that I thought he worked for me, right? Like you're sending my CV out, you're giving me this consultation, you know, I totally thought that like I was the client. And then it was like, when I started working at Huntress, it was like we have candidates and then we have clients, and clients are the ones we look after, and candidates are the commodity that, you know, we sell. But then what I realized was that in my market, there's more clients that there are candidates, and actually the candidate is actually the most important thing.
Yeah, I think I would always say the candidate is the product. So it's actually got, if we used to say like, you know, if you had to measure it 50-50, it'd be 51-49 candidates, because at the end of the day, they are your product. And if they're good, your clients will come.
Yeah.
But I did work in a contract market that there was thousands of candidates on the market all the time wanting jobs, and finding a job was the hardest bit. It was really hard. So I had a reverse experience than yours. But in a candidate short market, then They are your client.
They
right?
are. So for us, like, we're really like candidate centric. So we have this approach that the candidate is the customer in the way that we work.
Yep.
And then from just a kind of communications perspective, I'm really interested in sharing and showcasing people's stories. Yeah. Company stories are also really interesting, and we push that through when we're doing our marketing campaigns and when we're recruiting. You know, our job descriptions, we talk a lot about the technology, but we talk a lot more about the people that are in the business and kind of like their backgrounds and who would you be reporting to, and like, what's that person like to work for? Because recruitment is a people's business, you know, and I try to get behind the company itself to understand, like, who are those people working in that business. And that's why we're launching our own podcast called Career Diaries by Elemed.
Awesome.
And
it'll be MedTech careers.
MedTech, yeah. But the whole thing about it is all about the person behind the job title. You know, it's like, okay, you're a VP and we all know what you do, but how did you get there? And what do you do in your spare time? And like, do you have work-life balance? Do you believe in that? And it's something I tested, a content series that we did called Exceptional Women in MedTech, because I realized that there were hardly any women at senior level, because I was doing a VP search and basically realized that my whole shortlist was all men. And it was literally because there was hardly any women that were even coming up in my search. And I was like, we need to generate more awareness around this, you know? So I approached some women that just we found, you know, exceptional and inspirational in terms of where they'd got, the companies that they worked for and what we saw. And I interviewed them and we put it into like an article format, and we did like one a week, and there were 5 women that we interviewed. And the traction that it got, and just like the reach and the stuff that was coming back, it was really interesting for people to understand, oh, you know what? She goes running in her spare time, and that's how she maintains this work-life balance, you know? So that was the whole thought behind...
So the candidate piece is your major push.
Yeah.
So how has it affected the business? Because again, ROI is the one thing that everyone wants to know about when it comes to marketing. Like, I still think about 5% of the industry invests in marketing properly and the rest doesn't. So, and the reason is they don't believe there's an ROI. So what ROI have you seen from what you've done, and how would you quantify it?
I mean, I looked at all our placements over the last 2 years, and I think the number was 73% were from us being approached, right, by a client with a job. And that would be maybe an existing client, but also clients that we've never worked with before. You know, companies basically saying, hey, I've seen your stuff. I know you do this. Can you help us? And I think for me, that demonstrates that we're able to reach people, you know, and do business with people through our footprint, through our digital footprint, you know?
Do you know what I mean, JJ is behind the camera. He's not even listening. I can see him. But we've got, this will be going out after the expo, but on Tuesday and Wednesday in first week of Feb, we've got a stand at the Recruitment Agency Expo, and I'm speaking on the second day, which is awesome. But we've tried to all tie it in, and what we've got written on our whole stand is what percentage of your customers come to you. That's the whole thing about inbound to me, is like, and we've got 0 to 25%, 26 to 50%, blah blah blah, and so you would be almost in the 75% and above. I'm not expecting hardly anyone to put their name into that hat. So that's really impressive. Really impressive. And so to go back into the business piece, because you've gone year one, gone into this office. When did you start hiring? When did this, because again, you're building this brand now, jobs are coming to you.
Yeah.
When was it like, shit, I need to start actually bringing in people?
Yeah, exactly. Because that was exactly what it was. And at a certain point I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to build a company, you know, and I'm going to hire people. Right. And so it was September, what are we now? 2020.
2020.
So it was September 2018
that
I hired like my first 2 people. And it was like, I'm going to grow this empire, you know. I hired these kind of like 2 grads, bless them. They didn't know what they were in for with me, actually. But, you know, we started to like do it, and then it didn't work, right? Like that was for me like a steep learning curve when I made those first 2 hires for various different reasons.
Had you managed anyone in Huntress before?
Mentored, right? Yeah. So my route was top biller, right? Yeah. It was like I don't want to manage a team, you know, like I just want to bill, make money, be successful,
do my own thing,
be a mini celebrity in my market, you know, go and wine and dine clients. It wasn't to like build a big team. But so I kind of went in with this going like, I'm going to teach everybody how I recruit, and then everybody's going to be successful. And like,
doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work like that, right? And I realized that actually, you know, that might not be
So what went on with them 2 grads? So
with basically what went on, I probably didn't hire the right people because I didn't really know what to look for, you know? I knew kind of what to look for, but I didn't really know like what to look for, because when you recruit grads as well, you don't know if they're going to be good or not.
There's no real background to prove it, is there?
And I am a bit of a traditionalist in the sense that I believe in building a really good culture, but I do believe that people need direction and something to aim for, you know? So I kind of set some kind of basic, you know, calls, you know, number of calls that you need to make, you know. And I remember going away like on a business trip for like a day, and I came back and they were all happy that they'd made, you know, like 100 calls each or whatever. And then when I kind of looked into the actual details of like who they'd called, it was like calling the same person 20 times, you know? Yeah. And so I kind of realized, you know, I need to have someone that is able to manage on a day-to-day basis the team.
Yeah.
And then I made the decision to do that kind of like, I would say in February, March.
So what happened to those 2 people?
Yeah, they didn't stay around very long in the end. You know, after you find out something like that, what are you going to do, you know?
Yeah, you let them go, yeah.
So kind of like into...
But you had to look at yourself, didn't you? That's the key, is it's not...
I think, and do you know what? People talk about, you know, leadership. I think for me, I know what I'm good at, right? And that's billing, being on the phone and leading by example in that way, and telling people like, this is what I want for the business. But sitting down with people on a day-to-day basis and reviewing their stats and reviewing, you know, the smaller details, you know, more at a micro level, that's not me,
I'm
right?
a little bit like that.
Yeah, and I think you have to embrace it, you know, and I realized, and then I kind of was like, all right, I need leadership, you know, I need management training. So I put myself in a training course and called Situational Leadership. It's really good. I recommend doing that.
Is that a recruitment specific one or
not specifically, but it's more around how to manage people according to different scenarios, right? So the whole thing is
situational leadership.
Yeah,
and
situational
leadership. A website you can just go and have a look. Yeah,
it's like a Ken Blanchard, I think, is the organisation that do it. It was like a 2-day course.
All right, get onto that.
Yeah, definitely check that out. And then, so this is the interesting one. So so Tamana, who is now our associate director, I hired her September, October of last year, 2019. Yeah. So I made the decision in March, I need to hire somebody that's going to like help grow the team and be the manager, you know. And initially, when I first went to set up the business, I approached one of the people that I came across the most in the market, right, which was Tamana. And she worked for another company called Nonstop. And she wasn't interested in joining me at the time, right? So we kind of just left it where it was. But around the time where I had kind of said, hey, I need to, you know, whatever, she approached me and was like, hey, you know, how's the business going? I'm really impressed by the brand that you've built. I'm really impressed by kind of like what you've managed to do in the time, and let's chat. Long story short, we've hired her now. And so her thing is like, and that's something she did, you know, because she went down the route of building a division, building a group of recruiters and getting them successful and hiring more. Yeah. So now we're in a position where I feel like we've got a really good structure. Yeah. I'm back on the phone doing a lot more sales, which is what I like doing. I've got Tam here, like building out our team. We've got Mathilde from a marketing perspective to really like push forward our company brand.
So how many have you got in the business now?
We're 6 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've still got billing responsibility, brand responsibility, direction of the company, but Tam is going to be looking after the hiring and training of the people. That
and she's billing as well, right? I mean, we're a small business, everybody bills. Yeah. But it's more kind of like that. I identified that wasn't necessarily my strong point, and I found someone that could do it.
Really refreshing. Yeah, I think it was Matthew Eames' episode in season 1. We had a really good chat, and he was like, I think he'd been running his company for about 8 years when he was like, I'm still better in front of clients. That's who I am. I don't want to manage people quite. And he brought a CEO in, and the business has just been amazing since. And he's back out doing like exec search and everyone's playing to their play to your strengths. 100%. Right? And again, I'm way more comfortable out in front of a client, talking on a stage, being on a podcast than sitting looking at numbers and stats of what my team's done. I've done it and I can do it, but I prefer not to do it. So I've got to work that shit out internally as well. So what type of people are you looking for now, and how is Tam going to structure that business? Yeah,
so we've basically put together our hiring strategy. So for me, what's really important is that we're all quite, as a team, we're all really international.
Yeah.
So we are looking for language speakers, and then we're hiring all sorts of experience levels. So anything from kind of like senior, principal, down to kind of like grad wanting to get into recruitment and learn more about the business. For me, the most important thing is the culture, and that's when I did my strategy for this year. What I realized coming out of that, I always do like a 2-day thing where I sit by myself and just focus on the business strategy once a quarter. What came out of that was this year is all about building company culture. You know, as we start to grow the team, we need to have a strong culture behind it. For me, what's really important is somebody that has the ability to ask that extra question, you know, somebody that is able to collaborate, right? Teamwork is really important. What I've tried to do with Elemed is, what didn't I like at Huntress? You know, like, Tam, what didn't you like at Nonstop? And let's just cut all that out.
Yeah.
And I've tried to structure the business in a way which is really interesting, where a lot of like admin that's associated with recruitment, I outsource. The stuff that can be automated, I automate, so that the job itself is as core as it can be, which is on the phone, speaking to candidates, speaking to clients, and doing your own like social stuff.
So what are you doing to automate? Tell the listeners, what can they follow? What can they copy?
So there's some like really nice tools called, like, for example, If No Reply, which is like a great little plugin. If you use G Suite, you can plug it in and you can basically say, like, if people don't reply to your email, send this follow up. And then if they don't reply after that, send that follow up. And you don't have to ever think about following up, because it will automatically do it.
Wicked.
So you can build that in. What else do we use? Upwork and Fiverr, you know, a lot for stuff that, for social stuff, you know, like building videos and stuff like that could take us ages, where you can find an expert, you know, abroad that will just do it for you.
Media down the road,
or at Hoxo. You know, what other stuff do we use that I really, really like?
What about admin and stuff? Do you have anything for admin?
For admin, I use... let me think for a minute. So for admin, I have like virtual assistants.
All right.
That will copy paste stuff if it needs to be copy pasted, you know, bits and pieces like that. Calendly, we use a lot for scheduling calls.
Yeah, because I remember that back in the day. Like, I would go on a lot of meetings in recruitment, but I wouldn't schedule as many calls as I do now. Like back in the day, it would just be like, I'll call you then kind of thing. I didn't even put it in the diary. I just make sure I'd ring. Whereas now everything's scheduled. Like, you know, my diary's just always got links, people booking in.
Yeah, it's
and it's like, if you, and sometimes I meet customers now and they don't use those things. And I'm like, how are you not booking in your diary?
Yeah, because also what I found was that, like, I would spend so much time. One thing I hate in recruitment is how sometimes we're treated, and is like, okay, now I have to chase. I have to chase for everything. I have to chase for a CV follow-up. I have to chase to speak to the candidate. I have to chase to speak to the company. For me, it's like, this is a partnership. Like, here's the link to my diary. Tell me a time that's convenient, and, you know, let's book it in.
Yeah.
And since I've started using Calendly, for me, it's very rare that people will not make my phone calls. And if they do, they have the courtesy to say, hey, I can't make it, because it's more of a formalized booked call.
100%, yeah.
And also, you don't get people, you know, annoyed with you because you're calling them in the office with their boss next to them, you know. So it's more that formalized process, and that's super easy, that you can automate. And I'm really big on just like tech. So whenever I find out about something, I'm like, let's check that out and see if we can. So at the moment, we're looking at stuff for net promoter scores, you know.
Yeah, same.
And so there's one called Delighted that we're looking into.
Yeah. So how are you going to use that? Because like one of my recent episodes with Talentful, which is the on-site agency in tech, they use net promoter scores across their clients to promote, and they promote their aggregated score to all their clients. So if they're underperforming elsewhere, the client that might even be happy will find out, which I think is ballsy, but probably makes them why they're so good. How are you going to use NPS?
Yeah, so I think that various different ways. So for me, it's important to know that we're doing a good job. Yeah. And I think sometimes, you know, people come away from phone calls feeling like that was a great call, And I'm listening to it and I'm like, that wasn't a great call. And so I think having some data behind kind of companies that we're working with and candidates that we're working with who might not get a job through us, but just like, are you having a good experience? Because for me, candidate experience is really important.
Yeah, it's everything, yeah.
So one thing is like to be able to track if we're doing a good job. And another thing is, you know, like what comes out of that? What are the outputs? And can we market that in any kind of way, right? Like, you know, if the data is showing that we're performing extremely well in a certain area, like, I don't know what, like career coaching, let's say, like that's something that we can start to promote as, you know, something that we do that other people don't. So I think for me right now, it's more about let's see what the data gives us and then how can we use that in different ways.
It's really, really good work what you've done. I mean, it's exciting. And I've seen what you've been doing. I mean, we met in late last year at the TRN and I'd seen the brand, but I didn't know it was you. And then I've kept an eye on it now and it's super exciting what you're doing. I love it. And look, I believe personally that the niche recruiter is the future recruiter. I think the guys that know their markets, that are prepared to talk, prepared to give an opinion, that give a shit about what's going on in their space and own it, they're the brands that are going to make it. And the ones that are too general, they're going to struggle. They're going to massively struggle when more and more people like you come into this industry, leave the bigger brands and go, I'm doing it and I'm going to do it better. And I meet like 20 of these, 30 of these people a month now, and I fucking love it. Like that's who I want to work with. It's I want to fuel the industry like that. So more people like you is what I think the industry needs. What I want to do for the listeners is going back over the 5 years. Like a lot of people that have not started yet think, like, what the fuck is what could go wrong? Like, what are the real
much?
So to give us a couple of it all sounds amazing. You're doing an amazing job. You've got this amazing brand. You've got these great people, but really, what have you fucked up along the way? You've mentioned hiring 2 grads and not knowing that
didn't work out.
What else have you done?
I think, let me talk to you about learning points,
Okay.
I think, right? Because I think that's also more actionable that your people can kind of implement immediately. So where I went wrong probably was that what's taken me kind of 5 years to do, I probably could have done in 3 if I went in with a clearer strategy. And that's what I kind of said at the beginning, where at the beginning we were a little bit more reactive, right? It was like chasing jobs and placing candidates and then building the stuff you need to build a business on the side. So the first thing is like, take some time and get your foundations in place so that in year 2 or year 3, you don't have to stop to like rebuild your foundations because you don't have them, basically. And the other thing, you know, is super stressful. Like I was super stressed, you know, like it's not for everyone. It's not a kind of 9 to 5. I mean, recruitment never is, but like imagine that and everything else on top, you know, building the business, being marketing manager, operation manager, finance. I mean, I was sending invoices myself, you know, like chasing the invoices and doing the recruitment and business development. And so much can go wrong kind of there. I think also another thing you can do that I learned that was really valuable for me was literally write down, like, what do I do every day? And then go, what do I personally have to do? And what can somebody else do on my behalf? That for me was a game changer. I'm just annoyed that it took me like 1.5 years to get to that point where I sat down and did that, because then that makes it really clear. It made it super clear to me that what I was focusing on at a certain point was operations, not revenue generating activity. So that I think is something that people need to watch out on, you know, wasting too much time on the stuff that doesn't really matter or that you as the founder of the business don't have to do. What else can I share here? Build your personal brand. Yeah. And also, you know, I think the thing with that as well is sometimes people criticize, you know, I've had people criticize my posts or tell me that, I don't know what, you shouldn't have posted that, or you've said something wrong or whatever. But I think you have to just go with it, you know, and...
people they'll always fear what's different. And, and they'll, at the end of the day, if you want extraordinary results, you got to do extraordinary things, which is extraordinary, right?
And things you've never done before, like things people don't do, right? That's how you make an impact. So I think... But
dealing with that is important. I think I've had some times where a few people have wrote on my posts and a few people have slagged me off and stuff, and it hurts a bit at the time. You're like, fucking hell, do you really think that about me? Like, I'm not like that. But you just got to bounce it off. Just like saying someone says no to you and someone says no to you, like you've got to bounce it off. What's the future then? Where are you heading? Where do you see Elemed going in the future?
So we're going to be like the best niche MedTech recruiter.
Okay.
I think in terms of kind of like the next year, you know, for me, it's all about getting the right people in the business and creating this culture that's going to separate us. Continue to build our brand. I'm going to be doing a lot more speaking engagements this year. So that's something that I kind of really picked up on last year, where people have been kind of inviting me to speak on MedTech stages on talent in MedTech. And that's something I'm really enjoying. So that's something me personally, I'm going to continue to do. But as a company, you know, I'm really enjoying seeing people grow and develop and kind of like get to that next stage, you know. So for me, it's really about kind of like establishing ourselves. And actually one thing that I just wanted to mention, Simon Sinek, right? I listened to a talk that he was doing on impact theory, and he was talking about the infinite game. Have you heard of that?
Yes, but remind me.
All right. So the thing that I really like about the infinite game is that as business leaders, we set targets, right? And that's a finite game. And we set targets based on arbitrary numbers and saying, okay, we're going to do this in 1 year just because a financial year is 12 months, right? But actually, business is not finite. There's no end point. It's infinite. So leaders should be getting into the mindset of it's a lifestyle. You know, what we're doing, we're not aiming to hit 1.2 million. We're aiming to build the best MedTech recruitment company. And so by doing that, it's all about kind of like going to the gym. You do a little bit of it every day.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's not like what is the one major milestone that you're trying to hit. It's like, I want to do this every single day, be the best MedTech recruitment company every day.
Wow, I love that. How do you know you're the best?
So that's why we're implementing Net Promoter Score, for example.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's all about like the impact that we have, right? Like it's about candidates telling us that we're doing a good job. It's about making placements. It's about, you know, people going home. So one thing is external. One thing is for your companies that you work for and your candidates, that they feel satisfied with the service you're providing. But for me, the other thing is like that the people working in the business feel bought into what they're doing, and they go home feeling like they've had an impact and that they feel satisfied with what they've done. Yeah. And for me, it's like these two elements that would say that we're doing a good job, you know?
Yeah. I'd say I completely subscribe to all of that. Like we've got targets, but what I say is I want to connect marketing with sales across the global recruitment industry. That's my vision. I think more recruiters need to be like you and be more brand conscious, but I also think more marketeers need to be more sales conscious, and that needs to come closer. And I think I want to have an impact on that globally, and hopefully this podcast and the work we're doing at Hoxo can do that. I think you can get lost in numbers though. You can get lost in the detail. You've got to pull yourself out of that sometimes and remember why you're doing things when you're having bad days and shit goes wrong. I think a lot of recruiters I talk to, they start their business for the similar reasons you did, but then that's the only driver is to make themselves financially like in a great place. And that's a great reason, but it's not why candidates and clients want to work with you. Like no client goes, I want to work with you so I can get your next Range Rover. Like they don't do that. They want to work with you because they're buying into your reasons, your story, who you want to be. So you're definitely flying the flag there, which is awesome. What do you think about recruitment moving forward? Like what's your opinion? How's the industry going to change? You've mentioned personal branding, but what else do owners need to be conscious of and thinking about now, do you think?
I think that for me personally, I think it's a long game. I'm really excited about the future of recruitment because despite what people talk about when they talk about automation and stuff like that, I think that's great. That's going to make my life easier. Yeah. You know, and that's going to allow me to do more of what I like, which is speaking with companies and with candidates, right? So anything I can automate, I embrace. I think that it's not going away. I think it's just changing, you know. I think people are more interested in what else can you offer, right? And it being less transactional. And, you know, the career coaching piece, the kind of, you know, on-site. I know a lot of companies are looking at more kind of like doing stuff on-site. For me, from what we're kind of helping companies with is stuff like employer branding, you know. I think recruitment is so much more than just like the transaction of placing people in jobs. Of course. You know, it's the impact you can have on people's lives. And it's also the market knowledge that you bring with it. So I'm always thinking like, how can we be doing this differently? Add more product services. Yeah. Also, and how can we position it differently, you know? Because like recruitment is not transactional. And I think the sad thing is that in the past, it has been very transactional, and big companies have come in and put in these kind of, where you have to upload all the CVs, or it goes into this big black hole, nobody knows what. And it's given recruitment a bad name. But a lot of the time, it is also out of our control. And I think now we're having lots more smaller businesses popping up. People are doing things differently. And that's given an edge, I think, to the way recruitment is done. People are able to have a bigger impact on companies and candidates that they work with, because I think it is all about the niche, like 100%, you said.
100%. So final bit, when it comes to you as a person, you strike me as someone who's like consuming loads of information, consuming content. You're watching Simon Sinek, you knew Gary Vee. What are you reading, or what do you do in your personal time that's benefiting you? And because a lot of our, like, for example, what books you read and stuff like that. A lot of people ask me that, like, how do we upskill ourselves? So take away the recruitment 9 to 5 or 7 to 9 or whatever you do. What else do you do to keep you moving forward?
So I listen to podcasts.
Mm-hmm. The Rag is your number one on.
Yeah.
See, I knew that.
Indeed.
I knew it would be.
No, so I think for me, I'm really into mindset right now. You know. I really love, it's cheesy, but I love Les Brown from a mindset perspective. Just listen to him on YouTube and he gets you in a good mindset. From a kind of social and digital perspective, I love what Gary Vee says, so I really, follow a lot of what kind of advice he puts out there. Simon Sinek, more from a leadership perspective, is someone that I'm really kind of following.
He's my favourite.
He comes up with these concepts as well, and you're like, wow, why didn't I think of that?
It's his voice, like the way he goes, like, do you know that way where he says, you can go to the gym one day and you can look in the mirror and you see nothing. Yeah. And the way he says it, I'm just like, he could say anything and it'd be good. He's fucking awesome, I like impact theory. Yeah, I'm going to get onto that.
That's a good one, because you have a lot of variety of all different people, and, you just hear different stories and you pick up different things. So I think for me, these are kind of like the main, I have like someone from a mindset perspective, someone more from a kind of, TRN is like business perspective, know, and then I have Gary Vee for social, Les Brown for mindset. I forget what else I said now, I'm rambling.
But do you think a podcast replacing books then, in that way that you're upskilling yourself?
See, I love reading, but the problem that I have is that I don't have time to read, because it's difficult to read nowadays, right? Because you need to like look at a book. So for me, the good thing about a podcast is that I listen to it on my commute, on my way home, or kind of like when I'm in the bath, or the
gym or whatever.
And so
audiobooks are good for that though.
Also, I think podcasts are a little bit more real though, right? Yeah. It's more of a conversation. Rather than kind of an audiobook just being kind of like a book read to you. Yeah. But I think it's really important to kind of keep on top of these things.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Well, look, that's exactly an hour, pretty much, and I've enjoyed that chat. I've really enjoyed it. You're definitely one to watch, and I'm confident that you're going to achieve everything that you want in the MedTech space. I'll be keeping an eye and I'll be rooting for you. As always, I imagine you're open for anyone who's listening to get in touch if they want to ask any questions.
100% get in touch. Yeah. I'm Elena Kyria on LinkedIn.
Well, I'll tag you in this post and everything that goes out. And also, if people are looking to join, move, look, like you got an opportunity now, like that you are hiring right now?
We're hiring, and honestly, it's a great place to work, and it's such a warm desk, because of the branding that we've done.
That's a big one. I think
such a warm desk.
That is probably one of the things about inbound I say the most. Like if you're building a brand, you don't realize the impact it'll have on your consultants and the people you can attract in the future, because who wants to go and join a company that no one's heard of and has to do everything cold? Like they don't. They want to join a brand that's known. And if you're 5 years old, often you're a brand that no one's heard of, whereas you've proven that there's a way out of that. Yeah. So, awesome. I hope people get in touch. I had a guy who joined, he joined a company that he'd listened to the podcast, and he's just joined them in Singapore. And he messaged me the other day saying the podcast helped him make his decision. So
really?
Hopefully that'll help you and plenty of other people that have been on the show. that's it for another week. As always, I'd like you guys to share your comments, be active on LinkedIn, let us know what you think of this episode. And if you're listening on iTunes, please do give us your ratings and your comments on iTunes. The more 5-star ratings we get, the more that Apple will promote the podcast up the store. I'll be back again next week with another Recruitment Owner's Unique Story of Growth. Until then, have a great week, and I'll speak to you soon.